welcome back to the Strong Opinion Hibs podcast. This is another of our special interview series that we're running just now. And today we're joined by the Lions Den Orlando City podcaster, Alex. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm pretty good. Happy to be with you folks.
Yeah, it's good. We're glad that you can join us as well. And we've got Calvin's here as well with me. Calvin, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good, mate. I'm looking forward to hearing what Alex has got to say about Chris Mueller and sort of getting a wee bit of an insight from an Orlando's point of view. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. As Calvin just alluded to there, we're looking at our new American signing, Chris Mueller. And so, Alex, before we start, we'd just love to get a little bit of insight into the Lions Den podcast. So how did that all come about to start? Was that just a COVID thing, or has that been going for a long time?
We actually started about 5 years. This will be our 5th season coming up. And we just, a couple of us were season ticket holders and just got together and got to know each other. I actually got involved. I'm the one person in the pod that doesn't live in Orlando. I actually live about 3 hours from Orlando. And I just got involved. I talked to these guys on Twitter a lot, and they called me up one day, and they had already kind of decided they were going to do this and said, hey, we're going to do a podcast. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be by the fans, for the fans. And we just sit around every week, talk about what's going on with our favorite club. And yeah, we get fans involved a lot. We've done a couple of trips together, going to a couple of different matches and meeting up with fans. And we actually have a fairly good relationship with our front office as well. So we've sat down with our GM a couple of years ago. We actually had one of our founders and majority owners on the podcast during COVID. And we just talk about Orlando City. We've been doing it for couple of years now. COVID obviously has brought us closer together in that it's kind of an escape for us, but we still love doing it. So
yeah, sounds good. So obviously this is this episode's looking at your ex-player and now our player, Chris Mueller. So first question for you, Alex, how sad were you to find out that Chris was leaving Orlando?
That's a loaded question because Chris Mueller was my favorite Orlando City player. I was bummed because it was kind of are we going to keep him? Are we not going to keep him? This was obviously the final year of his contract after 4 years at the club, after being drafted in 2018. And it was sad. There were a lot of people that were pretty bummed. There were a lot of people that were also upset with Orlando City because we didn't get anything for him. We didn't re-sign him and sell him on. We gave him away basically on a free. And being upset about that kind of went away for me very quickly because in the end, this is what's best for Chris. And Chris is a very talented young man. He's a very thoughtful young man, and he can go. Or I honestly think Orlando City is just the beginning of his story. We gave him a place to grow, to nurture, coming out of the U.S. Collegiate soccer system, and he became a forever beloved figure in Orlando City lore. He actually holds our all-time appearance record in both MLS and all competitions. So yeah, he's going to be missed. I'm sad. I'm going to miss him on the wings. I'm going to miss him as a locker room presence and a personality. I was sad, but I'm happy as a United States men's national team fan because this is going to give him a lot more opportunities to shine in Europe and to continue to get Greg Berhalter's attention.
Yeah, that's good. So obviously you alluded there that he was 6th overall pick in the 2018 Super Draft, and that obviously means that he is a pretty hot prospect. So going from that season up until now, how you've obviously mentioned he's your record appearance holder. So how important as a player has Chris been as a player for Orlando City?
He's been an overall. He came in very quickly. Like most youth players, you give them time. Most draft picks, you give them time. His first appearance was our home opener in 2018. He got in there right away. He scored his first goals, had his first assists with him in a month as a professional player. And yes, he was a big prospect, but the fact that he slid to 6th overall, the MLS Super Draft is famous for having very few good players come out of it, but when they come out of it, they always have like great histories. I mean, look at, I don't know if you're familiar with our most recent success. Daryl DK just transferred to West Brom for our club's record fee. So he was a very hot prospect coming out of college. He went to the University of Wisconsin and had a very successful collegiate career there. So we were lucky to get him at number 6 overall. And that it's also proven that our club continues to get this kind of scouting. So, and he had a place to be nurtured and to immediately get play. So we were lucky to have him.
That's it. Go on, Calvin.
Did you expect him to fall as far down as 6th place, or was the sort of the rumor mill at the time when you knew he was available? Was that someone that you sort of had your sights on?
He was in, I remember that year. That was actually the first year we as a podcast did like MLS Super Draft predictions, and he was in the top 3 for almost everybody on the pod. So, and at the time we needed offensive talent because that was the first season that we didn't have Kaká, and that was the weird year where we didn't have Kaká, but Nani hadn't joined the club yet. So
right.
Yeah, that sounds good. So can you sum up the type of player that Chris is to us?
Yeah, he's confident. The overall theme of Chris Mueller is he's confident. He's not going to let one bad step, one bad pass get him down, and he's going to continue to press. He's going to continue to bring the ball in, and he's not selfish. So he's not selfish, but he's still confident. So when he sees an opportunity to take the ball all the way in, he's going to take it. But he's also been known to dump the ball off when he has a shot, knowing that number 9 or another winger or even a 10 is going to come in and have a better chance to score. And that's why his assist record with us was a lot more impressive even than his goals. His goal scoring, he's had some great goals and has been very clutch in some very precarious positions, but overall he's confident, he's quick. Like people don't talk about how fast he actually is, and I think that is going to play very well.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm not sure if you know much of the Scottish game, Alex, but what would you say are some of your predictions for Chris making this big jump overseas to play football in Europe?
I unfortunately I do not know much. I know you are definitely. I think you guys have been a club on the rise for a couple years now, if what I've heard is true. And I think he's going to give you guys a lot of speed. I don't necessarily think he's going to come in and score 20 goals a season for you guys or anywhere in Europe, but I think he's going to come in and cause a lot of defenses some heartache and get into double digits on assists every single year. I think he's going to be a problem, and not only that, I think he's going to be a very big positive attitude in the locker room, which is something that we are definitely going to miss from him in Orlando.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the prospect of him coming. Sort of came out of nowhere, this deal as well. So I think, based on what you're saying, it's a good and exciting talent to have at the club. So what What are your predictions for his career as a whole then? Do you think he's going to stay in Europe for the rest of his career, or do you think he'll eventually make his way back over to the States? So how do you see that going for Chris?
I think that he's still young. He's still 25. He's making the hop over a bit later than most players do for the U.S. But he's got a lot of ground to cover. But if he can continue to play the way he played in Orlando and continue his attitude, the sky's the limit for him. I can see him, if he plays very well with you over the next year. It's a World Cup year now, so he's got a lot of motivation, and this is a ideal move time for him. It allows him to get, like I said earlier, get on Greg Berhalter's radar again. He obviously was called up to the U.S. men's national team, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit, but it gives him those opportunities in a World Cup year. It also gives him the opportunity to get on the world stage, get into European football, and who knows, maybe he balls out for you guys and you guys get a nice fee for him to another European club. It's a win-win for you guys. I don't know how much you're getting him for. I don't know if that was ever disclosed, but I think it's a win-win because you're going to get a positive player, a fast player, a player that can contribute offensively, and also a player that you can always move on for a nice piece of business in the future. And you're also getting quite a few U.S. fans, because up until now, a lot of us didn't have Scottish teams. Now everybody's going to be tuning in on who knows what to watch Chris play.
Yeah, that's great. And you just touched briefly there on the men's national team. So do you think this move, getting out of the country, would be a big help for Chris to become a regular on that stage? Obviously, you're right, we're in the beginning of the year and the World Cup's in December. So do you think, having this move abroad for Chris is going to help your manager look at him a little bit deeper and potentially call him up for the World Cup in December?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think this move is perfect timing for him. This was not an accident. This was very strategic by both him and I'm sure he talked with his family and his agent about this, and this was very strategic in an attempt to get him back into national team camp. He actually made his debut for the national team right at the end of 2020 in one of the U.S. men's national team's first matches back. And in his debut, had 2 goals and 2 assists in Orlando's home stadium. So that was a very exciting day. I remember being very excited for him, but he hasn't been called up since. He wasn't called up for the Gold Cup, which is our equivalent of the Euros, even though it's not nearly as exciting because it always ends up being USA versus Mexico. And yeah, I think that but he has to perform. He has to perform in Europe and show that he's a European caliber player and that he deserves recognition. I don't think there's a very little chance he's going to start for the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup, but I can see him being forward wing depth. Good.
Who is it that's
leading up to it?
Sorry to interrupt you, but who is it that's in front of him in the US men's national team? Who's in front of him that he'd be competing for a place against?
I believe he would be competing with the likes of Josie Zardes.
Former LA Galaxy, wasn't he? Zardes.
LA Galaxy, I believe he's with the
Columbus Crew now. Yeah, he moved. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Also, with Chris Cadden as another player that we took from the MLS, so quite a lot of MLS talent, as you were saying, is moving over to Europe, even though he is Scottish. But no, that seems like quite a competitive slot in the US men's national team. Am I right in saying he's two appearances and 2 goals for the United States?
2 appearances and 2 goals. Obviously, there are other players that there's obviously Zardes is a U.S. based player. Jordan Morris, another popular choice. He was actually a homegrown player for the Seattle Sounders, and he has gone through a lot more injury. He's a little older than Chris, but he and Chris have a very similar playing style. And there's a couple of other younger players that he will have to compete with. It's a very deep position, but only 3 of them are currently in Europe. Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, and Timothy Way are all in Europe. Everybody else is in MLS, which obviously European players get more of a look for these kinds of competitions.
And you touched quite previously on about how sort of the character of Chris Mueller and how he's very confident, very positive attitude. I mean, we can see that through some of his social media posts that he puts out there. I think that would be good for our locker room, because in Scotland, I think I would go on and say, I've got a lot of American friends, and I would say on average they are probably a lot more cheerier than we are. It's quite cold here. Sky's usually grey. So I think him coming in and having that injection of positivity will be really good. Which leads me on to my next question about Chris Mueller's book. Have you read his book? I've seen that he'd actually went and wrote a book. And if so, if you've read it, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll talk about the book, and then I want to circle back to the cold and gray comments and his overall motivation and character. The book, I have not read his book, unfortunately, but I have read excerpts, and I don't think this is going to be his last book. I think this is just him bringing the amount of positivity, the amount of self-motivation, and also his faith into overall motivation. And this isn't just, I'm a highly motivated young soccer star. This is him trying to help everyone, from fans to everyone in every walk of life, be motivated to be their best selves. And this is the kind of self-motivated culture that he has promoted. He always posts a hashtag BTB,
be the best, yeah.
And he always strives for that. So while nothing is good enough for him, he always wants to be better. He's also motivated to stay positive and stay in the moment. That's why you see these kinds of social media. That's why you see the amount of positivity. And this shows not only in his social media. You can post on social media if you want, but it shows in his actions. I have a very distinct memory of him from preseason 2019. Traditionally, MLS does not do a lot of open preseason matches. This one year, Orlando did host a small tournament where they had open ticketed matches for relatively cheap in our home stadium. And after one match, the entire team had walked off, training staff was off, and he had become a fan favorite. This was his second year. And I believe he had just changed numbers, and we had just premiered our new kit, and Luis Nani was about to be announced. So it was an exciting time for the club. Ended up having a horrible season, but and he stays for 45 minutes signing autographs for every fan that would come down, wave him down, and walked the entire perimeter of the pitch. That's a distinct memory. And obviously with the book, I've seen this even after he left the club. He was here for 2 months after our club season ended, and he was leaving copies of his book signed in bookstores, library nooks throughout the city. He had a good time with it, and he gave back to the community. And this is also prevalent in how he always goes back on any international break. He always goes home. When he's not playing, he always goes home. He always goes to see his family. He actually got married this year, so that's also been a very positive on his overall life. So he's a very highly intelligent, highly motivated family guy that also looks to be the best, and make the people around him the best. And he's had some great mentors too over the years. Obviously, he missed Kaká by a year, but he had Luis Nani was a big mentor for him, and Dom Dwyer. He and Dom Dwyer were close even after Dom left the club.
That seems like a really good memory that you shared there, and obviously it's one that stuck with you. Sort of leading on to our last question about Chris is, what's your favourite Orlando City memory that you have of Chris Mueller? It could be perhaps something that was a little bit sentimental, like you said there, or it could be something that he'd done in a match, or what's a memory that sticks out in your mind? How do you sort of remember the player of Chris Mueller?
I'll respond to that question with a question. What is Hibs' biggest rival?
Hearts. They're called Hearts. They're from Edinburgh too.
Okay. So a nice little crosstown rivalry. Imagine coming in and never beating them in your entire existence for like 5 years. Obviously, MLS is way different than all the other club competitions in the world. No pro rel, no lower system that feeds in, and that's the only way you can bring in clubs. We buy our clubs in. Orlando City did start as a lower club, but we eventually were brought into MLS. And a couple of years later, another club from a city in a bordering state, Atlanta United, came into the league, and immediately it was a rivalry. Immediately, and ever since then, there have been so many stories, so many things I've seen that I've never seen at sporting events before. Growing up an American football fan and falling in love with the game of soccer, football, if you will. And we didn't beat them for 4 years. They actually won an MLS Cup in that time. And in 2020, during the pandemic, there was one goal that I will always remember, where Chris he's running quick. He's just had a bad mistake, but he jumps on a counter, and instead of taking the counter all the way to the hole and shooting, he sees, I believe it was Nani to his right, pumps it up to him. Nani dumps it off to our other winger. At the time, for some reason we had three. Oh no, excuse me, Benji was playing striker at the time, but dumps it off to him, and it's this right, far left, and then Chris is still running with the play, even though he has already given it up, runs all the way into the box, and ball falls to his feet, and he just pounds it in. And that turned it all for us. And that was the first time we ever beat Atlanta United. And it was an unbelievable feeling. His celebration, the way he was so proud and so happy for what he had just accomplished and for what he had done. That's a positive memory. This other memory is a lot shorter, but also involves Atlanta United. In 2019, we made our domestic cup run to the semifinals. Never had done this before. This came amidst a very poor league season. And we had just won a penalty shootout quarterfinal. And in the semifinal, we played Atlanta United, and we lost. Didn't have a great outing. And I distinctly remember, and I have a picture of it that I'll share with you folks, that the first thing that his reaction is, he wasn't too far from me in the stands when this happened after the match. He just falls on his knees and he starts to cry, because it meant so much to him that he wanted to make this happen for the club. And he was disappointed. And I think that was a turning point in how motivated he was. And that's what led to our great 2020 season and him having an unbelievable season. And ultimately why I think he's ended up getting to Europe and being with you guys. So, and to touch on his hometown real quick and talk about him playing in the gray, in the Scottish weather, if you will. He grew up in Chicago, western suburb of Chicago. And I don't know what you guys know about Chicago.
I've been. It's really nice.
Yeah, in the winters, it's not.
No, I went in summer, but yeah, I could imagine.
Oh, in summer, the lakefront's beautiful. I actually grew up there myself. But he's used to playing there. He grew up in academies playing there. He obviously played in Wisconsin, which is even worse. So Florida was a little weird for him. I think he's going to feel right at home playing in your guys' little bit more gray, a little bit. Does it rain a lot during the season?
If you get the chance, just to interrupt you, I actually bumped into him on the Royal Mile, which is in Edinburgh. I bumped into him in the street and I asked for a picture. And if you go on our podcast page and scroll down, you'll see me in the picture with him. And I think he's got like 3 jackets on, a big woolly hat and everything like that. It's quite funny if you go have a look for the Orlando fans who are listening. You'll enjoy that picture. It's funny.
So you're telling me his blood's gotten a little thin. Interesting.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I speak on behalf of myself and Calvin, but we're really excited to see Chris join. And what would be like? How would you describe Chris Mueller in one word as a player?
Oof, as a player, that's tough.
Or as a man, either or works.
I think that I have to stick with motivated. Motivated. It describes both his personality and it describes his work ethic. He's not going to need he doesn't have discipline issues when it comes to other teams. He's not the one getting in the middle of fights. He'll fight for his teammates, but he won't make it a problem. To my knowledge, I don't think he's ever been red carded, but he's motivated. He's always trying to improve. And that's what you can look forward to the most out of him. And I think he's going to do the same thing he did for us. He was a runner for Rookie of the Year when he came into the league, and because he had such great motivation and he came in early on knowing I'm going to be good at this. I'm going to make a difference in this league. Now he's an all-time leader in appearances. He's up there in goals scored for the club too. And I think he might be the top 3 in assist leader. But that's what you can look forward to. That's what you can believe in. And I think he's going to come in very early on and make a difference for you.
That's great. Well, that really brings us to an end of our interview with Alex. And I'd just love to say thank you for taking the time this early in the morning to come and chat to us from where you're based. So yeah, and where can the Hibs fans find your podcast if they're looking to get a little bit more of an Orlando feel?
Yeah, Orlando City. We are obviously coming into a very big season. We've had 2 great seasons, but it's kind of a turning point. Luis Nani's out, Daryl DK's out. Chris has obviously joined you guys, and on Orlando Lions Den podcast, you can find us at Orlando Lions Den on Instagram, Twitter. I don't think we have a TikTok yet, but I'm sure that'll happen at some point. And yeah, we're going to be getting on there pretty soon and just talking about the season. We've already made a couple of big acquisitions. Well, one confirmed, another one that's coming very soon in this off season. And yeah, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all of those is where you can come and find your new favorite MLS club.
Well, that's great. Well, that like I say, that brings us to a close. So thank you so much for joining us, Alex. We look forward to chatting to you maybe again at some point soon. And then until next time, come on the Hibs.